Hey, Quad Culture. I'm gonna be completely 100 with you. I'm a little mad right now. I was wearing a Michigan hat a little while ago. It's off now because I thought I was done recording. Me and Noah, we put out a good 30 minutes of basketball. It was awesome, but I got a call in the middle of it, and now there is no 30 minutes of basketball. So we're going to welcome Noah to the pod for the first time. Not his first time, but your first time. Noah, how are you?
I'm good, man. Doing a little recap of what we just talked about. I love it. It's March Madness week. I can talk hoops for a few more minutes. I love it. I love it.
It's a little bit of madness. So, me and Noah went really quickly through our contenders. Noah, I believe, took Duke first, and then I followed that up with Michigan State. Then, who'd you take in the second round, Noah? I'm
I
trying to
took
remember.
Houston. I took Houston.
Noah took Houston, and then I took St. John's because you gotta love you some St. John's. And then we both went SEC. Noah went with the champs, Florida, and I went with Alabama. So those are our contenders, basically. They're pretty chalk. They're pretty much like that. Noah, before we get into your final four, give me just one pick in your bracket that you think can cause a big upset.
Yeah, I look at one thing I've talked about before is momentum. We can talk about whether it's real or not, but winning your conference tournament, especially as a mid-major, coming into the NCAA tournament, I think bodes really well. Um, I'm a big Mountain West guy, live in Boise. I'm rocking the Zags right now, but kind of a Boise State fan just by being close to them. Um, Colorado State beat Boise State in the Mountain West Championship just last weekend. Kind of dominated them, to be honest with you. But in the last game of the regular season, I got to see Colorado State um, give Boise a run for their money, and I got to see Nick Clifford. For those of you who are not familiar, uh, I think he's going to be a legit NBA prospect, and he dropped a cool 37 on the Broncos up here in Boise just last week, and it was an easy 37. Like it was one of those you're looking at the scoreboard, it's like how many points does this guy have?
Yeah.
Um, and they're one of the hottest teams in the country. I think coming into the tournament, beat what I think is a really solid Mountain West conference, and I think they've got the chance to make some noise there in that region.
Yeah, and that leads perfectly. Also, we love to give the Mountain West some love because we all know that out here we don't get enough media love from ESPN and those types of things. So we like to give Colorado State their flowers. So I'm going to jump into my upset, which is also going to go into my Final Four pick. We're going to talk a little bit of Creighton. I know we talked about it in the last one. I know I went big. Creighton Louisville is, I think we both agree, is probably the biggest coin flip matchup of the first round. There's a lot of excitement there. Did you went Creighton, correct?
I went Creighton. Yeah.
But we both agree that's a game that could go either way. But the big thing about Creighton in the upset is I don't just have them going one or two rounds. I have them going all the way to the Final Four. I don't have them winning any championship or anything, but I really like Creighton. I really like, particularly that they have a really big guy in the middle who can score, who can rim protect, and Creighton's the type of team that can really slow it down with him, and so I like when you can slow it down, especially when you play those teams with pace. To go with Creighton, I have Duke. I think Duke's a pretty clear choice, especially since it seems like the Cooper flag, pulling him out of the tournament, was more to just kind of protect him for the big tournament than it was for the ACC. If it was a bigger thing, I think we would be seeing him not play. So I think Duke, obviously, Clemson. Uh, if you missed it, my hot take is not a Kelvin Sampson fan, former coach of the Montana Tech or Diggers. Not a fan of Montana Tech either, but I just think Kelvin Sampson's team reeks of consistency, which is usually a very great thing to say. But I think in a momentum game, they could get punched in the mouth a little bit. And then I'm going to go with the boys from New York, St. John's, Rick Pitino. Get a really good Rick Pitino led squad in there, a squad that plays with a lot of toughness. Ultimately, I think it's probably a St. John's Duke final, but I think Duke's going to win. So what do you think of my final four before you launch into yours?
Yeah, no, I think it's really solid. frankly, I think that the Creighton pick is nice. I think they have the chance to upset Auburn, definitely number one overall seed in the tournament. They're in that round of 32 matchup. I think it'd be hard for them to get past both Michigan and Michigan State.
Yeah,
And so I don't know if I can give them quite that much love. Um, but I think you hit the nail on the head with both Duke and St. John's. Duke, without Cooper Flag, is still one of the most complete teams in the country. And make no mistake, Cooper Flag is the best player in the country at 18 years old.
yeah,
And so adding him back, and it sounds like it's just a low ankle sprain. Duke is being pretty vague about the nature of the injury, understandably so.
yeah,
But even if he's at 80, 85%, just having him on his presence on the floor just makes such a huge difference. And Duke ran the table in the ACC tournament. And granted, it's not a very strong ACC this year. I mean, they have the same number of bids as the Mountain West, and frankly, UNC should not be in this tournament at all. Don't even get me started about UNC being in the field. But despite the weakness of the ACC, Duke is still the best team in the conference easily, and in my opinion, the best team in the country. And
mhm,
so I'm with you there. St. John's, I think we're on the same page there. I think what Rick Pitino has done in year two is just tremendous. They're a really solid, well-rounded basketball team. They control the pace really well. I think they're really solid defensively. You watch them and you think that they shoot a higher three-point percentage than they do
yeah,
because they make the big shots.
yeah.
And I think that that's something that bodes well going into the tournament. So I'm with you. I'm with you on Duke and St. John's. They're also both my Final Four. You dissed on Houston a little bit. I think Houston is one of the best teams in the country. I think they're, like you said, remarkably consistent. I'm going to view that as a good thing because
Yeah.
maybe I'm whatever.
No, you're
But
right. You're right. Consistency is a good thing.
but they're so athletic and their defensive energy is off the charts. I think that they're just going to be a menace down in that Midwest region. So I'm going to go Houston in the Midwest. And then I'm going to go with one of your contenders. You're not picking one of your contenders to make the Final Four, but I'm going Michigan State and Tom Izzo
Yeah.
um, up in that South region. I think coaching really conquers all. We've talked about that a little bit. Coaching really conquers all. I think they are the best team in the Big Ten, even though they had a tough loss there. Um, uh, I think that they're going to be there at the end. Um, so yeah, I've got Duke, I've got Houston, Michigan State, and St. John's. A little chalk, no one lower than a 2 seed, so that's not very exciting. Um, Definitely room for some excitement. I can see Wisconsin making a run. I think I could see Michigan making a run. I could see Oregon making a run. Um, Now those are all Big Ten teams, so you can kind of
Yeah.
see where my head's
Yeah.
at. It's a little bit of a toss up there. Um, but that's where I'm at with my Final Four. I got Duke, Houston, St. John's, and Michigan State.
So aside from that, right? We've talked a little bit about just different aspects, team aspects, things like that. Obviously Cooper Flag is going to be the big buzz name. We're going to see all sorts of things. I mean, I think the over under of how much Cooper Flag shooting the ball in warm ups tape is going to be crazy. But is there a player that you're looking out for? You highlighted a guy from Colorado State, obviously, but is there anybody else that when you look at, that you're like, that's a player that I really like?
Ooh, that's a really good question. I think one of the names that comes to mind, and I want to make sure I get his name right. I think it's uh, let's Tanjay John Tanjay of the Wisconsin Badgers. He was
Yeah,
really impressive to me in the Big Ten tournament. Really has the ability to take over a game. Um, ball dominant guard, really good shooter. I think he can really take over a game. He's one that was really impressive to me in the Big Ten tournament. That's a name to watch out for as we get going.
and I guess as sort of a capper on our conversation, you know, uh, there's a lot of players that can really change the fortune of their team, but I think there's no player that maybe potentially could change the fortune of their team more than Caleb Love, right? Love to shout out a name twin. What are your thoughts on Caleb Love, right? Because you're looking at a guy who could either go into the game, make no shots, and Arizona loses like bad, Or you could look at a guy who could put the team on his back and say, hey, we're making a trip to the Final Four, guys, which includes, I think, going through Duke. Like, he is that kind of a player that when he's hot, that team is going to roll. So, what are our thoughts on Caleb Love?
Yeah, no, it's funny. It's hard to talk about Caleb Love and not also think about RJ Davis. Like they kind of go hand in
Yeah,
hand for me a little bit.
teammates
Um,
once.
I know, and it's funny that thinking about the guys who have been in the tournament for a long time now. Like I think of like a completely different type of players, Hunter Dickinson too, like who just
Yeah,
feels like he's been around for 8 years. Um,
that they went to
it
college for like 7 years and we went for 4.
Exactly. It's like we were watching these guys when we were in high school in the tournament, and now we're graduated and they're still in the tournament. Like, what are we
Yeah,
doing here, guys? But the feast or famine really makes me nervous because not only is it feast or famine with Caleb Love, is like when he's feasting, it's feasting, but man, when it's dry, it's dry.
there's
And
nothing. Nobody's eating.
no, and he's such a ball dominant guard, and he's going to get his, but. Um, Man, it's tough because he's such a talented player and a really elite scorer.
Yeah,
Um, but I think sometimes he lacks the ability to know when he doesn't have it and give it up for somebody else. And um,
yeah.
that's just kind of the way Arizona's built. I mean, I think they're a solid squad, but I think they kind of are going to live and die a little bit on how he produces.
And then give me a buzzword. Give me a buzzword for what do you think is an X factor for like the tournament? Like what do you think is a very important factor for a team that's going to win this tournament?
Ooh, that's a good question. You got to go with energy, and I mean, I think that's something that when I watched the UConn team 2 years ago when they were that 4 seed, and there was
Hmm.
no doubt that they were going to run the table as a 4 seed, which you don't really see much.
Yeah.
Is like they just were unstoppable. Like they got in a roll, and you could feel it watching them,
Hmm.
that they were not going to stop. And so teams that really move the ball, really active on defense and turning their defense into offense, and really feed on that, I think really bodes well. And that's really why I like Houston because I think
Yeah.
they do that really really well. So I think that the energy is really really key, and that's very generic when you talk about basketball. But I think that's one where you get going and it's hard to stop.
I think want it is huge, and I think that goes with
Yeah.
energy. I mean, I think you get you we talked about it a little bit in the never before seen pod. But just that idea that these are college kids, 18 to 20 year olds, 18 to 22 year olds, maybe 25 year olds at this point. But you're dealing with guys who their ego can go up and down, their confidence can go up and down, and if you have an older senior lineup of guys that are like, I'm never going to play basketball again. And they're playing against, I'm not saying Cooper Flagg's looking past it. He seems like a really competitive guy, like he wants to be at Duke, but you're dealing with those kind of guys that are going into the draft. Like that guy who's never going to play basketball again, he might go for that extra ball. He might play a little bit harder on defense because it just means more. So,
Well, and that was Jack Golke last year, who
yeah,
coming into the tournament, nobody had any idea who he was, and then comes out against Kentucky and drains 12 threes, like
yeah.
absolutely could not stop him. Um, yeah, it's how March is. You get hot, it's your last time playing basketball, and especially those mid majors, dude. Oh, it's fun to watch. Even if it's a bracket buster, it's fun to
Yeah.
watch.
All right, Noah. So this time, I'm going to compliment your music taste again. It's all over the place. You got a wide variety. You like a lot of different stuff. You're not just going to sit there and listen to one thing. You're going to move around. So give my listeners a little bit. Give them a little bit of the catalog. Give them some music that they should be on right now.
Yeah, so in the previous unforeseen version, Caleb talked about the stereotypes of like only listening to one genre of music and kind of that being the stereotype of only listening to rap or whatever or country music. I fall into the very existent stereotype of I listen to everything but country, which is kind of true, but for better or for worse,
Yeah.
whatever. Um, a, a couple things I've been on recently. I've been on a little bit of a hip hop kick. I've been listening to some of the stuff from when we were in high school. Um, I've been listening to a lot of Astro World recently. I think it's one of the best hip hop albums, of the 21st century. Um, I think that, and I'm getting messages from my roommate talking about how country music's the best, popping up on my phone. Um, but yeah, I think Astroworld's really, really top to bottom record. I think Yosemite is a really underrated track. Butterfly Effect is a single on that album that I think just really stands the test of
Yeah.
time. I've been listening to a lot of that recently, among other things. But also, so I go to as many concerts as I can. If there's an artist that I remotely listen to, if they're coming to town, I'm going to go see them. One of my favorite artists is Peach Pit. They came to Boise last May, and I was out of town. And I have not seen them in concert before, but I am going to be able to go see them in Portland in
Okay.
June this summer. So I'm stoked about that. They just released an album late last year called Magpie. It's really solid. And then one of my favorite albums of all time is You and Your Friends.
Okay.
It's a Peach Pit album. Again, really solid, top to bottom listen. And yeah, really, really solid. Good vibes. Good vibes.
So I'm gonna counter your peach pit with something just super basic. I'm gonna go super. I'm gonna go chalk for this. Joni Mitchell, her album Blue, Rolling Stone a while ago, it was like one of the top 30 albums ever. I still don't think she gets enough love. I think especially as we move into this Bob Dylan, Joan Baez era, after people seeing that movie really like it. I still like experienced it for the first time a couple days ago. I think I put it on my Instagram story that it was a little bit music changing for me. Obviously she's blowing up right now big too because Amanda Seyfried went on and killed it on the Tonight Show and played one of her songs. But check out Blue. I mean, it's a beautiful album and people love it for a reason.
That's great.
All right,
Hey,
Noah,
before we go,
you go.
UNC Wilmington going on a run, 14 seed, gonna upset Texas Tech. They're the Seahawks. Sometimes favoritism conquers all.
Hey, I
UNC Wilmington,
respect it.
book it.
UNC Wilmington, Creighton. We're all about these schools that have just strange names. Strange names. All right, Noah,
and
thanks so
they're
much for coming on. Oh, no, you
and
go.
and they're
Go.
a they're a UNC that deserves to be in the tournament.
Yeah. Yeah, what is this? Why we're just saying since you have the Jordan brand, you get to play basketball in March? That's not cool.
Well, and Caleb, I don't know if you saw this, but do you know who the chair of the selection committee is?
Is it the coach? What's his name? Why is it escaping me right now? Give it to me.
It's the UNC athletic director.
Nah.
and he,
Nah.
and he gets $100,000 bonus for his team being in the tournament. I am not kidding.
That's not. Free Boise State. Free Boise State. We were talking about that UNC needed a general manager earlier in the year because this roster was not playing well at all. That is not a team that should be in the tournament. There's not another team in the tournament that you're like, "Oh wow, we were really questioning the brand recognition and everything during the year." Come on.
One quad one win, 1-12 in quad one games. Um, yeah, West Virginia should be in over them. Indiana should be in over them. But
I almost feel like if you lose to your rival 3 times and one of those times they don't even have their best player, it should be like, we don't want to go. We don't
I
deserve it.
agree. I agree. I
If
agree.
you
I'm
if
with
you
you.
lose twice, whatever. But yeah. All right, Noah, thanks for coming on.
Yep. Appreciate it, Caleb.
Have a
Take
good
care.
one for part 2, I guess.
Part two.